All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rechak Wadash. Double honors to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of Great Millstone, who rule very well, very beautifully. Double salutations to the Akim her pushing his gospel, truth and sincerity, to the best of their ability, given to them by Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, peace, blessings, and salutations be unto the elect scattered abroad by the election of Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Lord willing, fall upon your houses. This is Brother Quanah Wath from the Arizona Great Millstone Camp. Come back at you, Lord will, with that edifying lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Lord will. It is edifying, Lord will. It is straight to the point. And I was, ultimately, watching the priest Amawan Gabar, out there in New York, his lesson he did earlier going into, 70 AD, right? And how the time that is coming is going to ultimately surpass that, right? And how it's going to be, right, for a lot of you Israelites out here, man. Right, you 2/3 Israelites, right, you so-called Black, Hispanics, and Native Americans that ultimately reject Yahweh Shemiel Shai, in his word, right, this word, this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, right, you reject it, right, you cast it behind you, and that's ultimately going to lead, right, to you being put to death. It's going to lead to you being destroyed by Yahweh Shemiel Shai in these times that are coming, man, versus, right, the elect, right, that 1/3, right, that's going to be left therein, as we read in Zechariah 13:8, right, is ultimately going to be delivered, right, protected, in the times to come. Matter of fact, we'll grab that, right, because really, the ultimate, the message is, right, the Lord Yahweh Shemiel Shai is dealing with the elect of the nation of Israel. He's not dealing with, any, all of Israel at this moment, at this time, right? In ancient Egypt, right, when he was, bringing the Israelites, out of, ancient Egypt, right? He brought all the Israelites out, man. But in this time, he's not doing, right, that same thing, right? There's going to be a deliverance, right, that's going to ultimately eclipse, right, the deliverance of, ancient Egypt, right? But it's not going to be all Israel in this time, and it's only going to be, right, the elect of the nation of Israel, right, who's ultimately, that first fruits, right, the best of their class, right, as we're going to get into. This is Zechariah 13 and verse 8. It says, and it shall come to pass that in all the land, and contrary to popular belief, right, this land is talking about America, right, and this is where, the greatest deliverance and the greatest destruction is ultimately going to take place. It says, saith Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai, it says, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die, meaning they're going to be destroyed on this side, man. And we understand that there's the last 2 major prophecies, right, which is Jacob's trouble, right, which is also called the hour of temptation, Revelation, the 3rd chapter, right, as well as World War III, in which both those prophecies, right, there's going to be a lot of death, right? There's going to be mass amounts of death, and a lot of that is going to be you 2/3, right? Especially in the time that's coming, right, real soon, which is Jacob's trouble, the hour of temptation, right? That's why it's called Jacob's trouble, right? Which Jacob is synonymous, right, with Israel. Right, so a lot of you Israelites are going to be in a position of difficulty in the times that's coming, and that's going to be, again, a lot of your downfall, which is really judgment, right, for y'all continuing to follow, right, after the wickedness of this world, man, right, and we'll come back to this, right, in Matthew's, the 7th chapter. Actually, I thought of a better precept. This is Jeremiah chapter 8 and verse 3, right? It says, and death shall be chosen rather than life. And we understand that death, right, as we go into Matthew's, the 7th chapter, right, beginning at the 3rd verse, right? Death is what? You walking on that broad and wide path, right? Which many there be that find it, which is the ways of the world, right? Following after wickedness, right? Which is all things contrary to the law, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh B'Shem El Shai, right? Committing adultery, committing murder, right? Being covetous, being greedy, being, an adulterer, right? Eating all manner of abominable foods, committing abominable acts, being a Mo, a transformer, right? All those things are contrary to Yahweh B'Shem El Shai and contrary to righteousness, man, right? Which is wickedness, right? Which leads to death, right? That's Romans, Romans, the 3rd chapter, the 23rd verse, right? For the wages of sin is death. Matter of fact, I think that's Romans 6 and 23, if I'm not mistaken. Romans 6 and verse 23, yes, Slakia, right? It says, for the wages of sin is death, but the gift of the Most High is eternal life through Yahweh Shai HaMashiach our Lord, which is what the elect are going to be receiving, right? The everlasting life. And eventually, all Israel, right, shall be righteous, as we read in Isaiah the 60th chapter, right, the 21st, 22nd verse, right? But we understand that the elect, right, those are the ones that are ultimately going to be, through the spirit and power of Yahweh B'Shem El Shai, right, skating through, right, these times, right, that are approaching, right, and to receive and be part of the first fruits, right, into the kingdom, man. Be the first fruits into the kingdom. Be the first, right, to receive those blessings, the ultimate blessing from Yahweh B'Shem El Shai, which is rulership, right, everlasting life, right, perfection, right. The rest of the Israelites are ultimately going to perish on this side, man, right, because they continue to choose and follow after wickedness. Rather, go back Jeremiah 8 and verse 3. It says, and death shall be chosen rather than life by the residue of them that remain of this evil family. And this is speaking about the Israelites, right? You continue to follow after that lifestyle, right, that Esau's pushed out here and ultimately, glorified and, this and the third. That's going to lead to you being judged by Yahweh B'Shem El Shai. And the Lord said he will not at all acquit the wicked, man. Meaning you're not going to, just get away with, your wickedness, man. The Lord's not going to allow you to get away with it. Even though a lot of these people out here, man, they think that they're good, they straight, but that's not the case, right? Ecclesiastes, 8 and 11, right? Though a sinner do evil 100 days, right, it should not be well with the wicked, man. Roughly paraphrasing, man. Right, verses 11 all the way down to 13, but it shall be well with those that fear Yahweh B'Shem El Shai, man, right, which that fear is going to be established and cultivated within the elect in these times, right, of Yahweh B'Shem El Shai, man, not walking on that broad wide path, but walking on that straight and narrow, right. It says, which remain in all the places whither I have driven them, save the Lord Yahweh B'Shem El Shai of hosts. Which again, this identifies, right, that the Lord is talking about the Israelites, right? You go back to Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, the 68th verse, right? It tells you that, that they were brought, right, into Egypt again, right, by way of ships, right? Which the Israelites were the only ones that were, scattered, right, into the four corners of the earth, right, via, cargo ships, man, right, from the northern tribes to the southern tribes. Right, prior, around the time of Cristobal Colon, when they came over here and basically, put the northern tribes in captivity, right, and then 1619 when they put the southern tribes, right, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, into captivity, right, over on the western or the eastern hemisphere of the earth, the western parts of Africa, right, Ghana, so on and so forth. Again, this is showing you who this is talking about. It's talking about the Israelites, man. And again, 2/3 of our people are going to choose this lifestyle, and they're going to get judged, and that's going to be their death. But see, they've been warned, right? They've been told, and that word has been spoken unto them, man. Right? Psalms the 19th chapter. Psalms 19 and verse 3. It says, there is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. And this is speaking about the prophets, right? The mouthpiece of Yahweh B'Shem El Shai, right? You got the prophets, right? The true prophets, Yahweh Bashim Al-Shah, which we believe through faith, right? Start with our elder apostles, right? Of Great Millstone, right? On down, right? The elder bishops, elders, right? Akim that came before us, right? You know, and younger brothers such as myself, right? That ultimately go out here, right? And preach and teach, you know, this doctrine and give out that warning through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashim Al-Shah. You know, it's gone throughout the four corners of the earth, right? Which is also prophecy pursuant to, you know, Matthew's 24th chapter, right? That this word shall be preached in all the ends of the earth, right? Then shall the end come. And this word has been preached, right? To all the four corners of the earth, you know? So nobody, you know, can say that they, you know, they haven't heard about the Israelites or anything like that, right? Even, again, Jake out here, man. There is no excuse that they can make, right? They know that they're Israelites, man. Right? They either choose to, you know, accept it, which will be the elect, right? And the Lord has to be dealing with, you know, and dealing with you, right? In order for you to be able to receive, right, this knowledge, this truth, right? And then you're going to have some that are, you know, a vast majority, which are going to ultimately reject this truth, man. Which those are the reprobates, right? Those are the, you know, the disapproved, right, of Yahweh Bashim Al-Shah, man, that chaff, right, that's ultimately going to be thrown into that fire, you know? There's no excuse, man, at this point, you know? But as the scriptures say, right, in Isaiah the 6th chapter, right, that at the very end, they're going to finally get it. They don't get it now, right, but at the very end, they're going to finally get it, right? In Ezekiel, the 33rd chapter, I think it's the 32nd verse, or the 33rd verse, it says, and when this cometh to pass, lo, it will come, then shall they know that then shall they know that a prophet hath been among them, right? They're going to remember, man, that shit I was told, and this is why I'm going through what I'm going through, right? At the last minute, the Lord is ultimately going to, you know, show them that they fucked up. And they're going to have to receive that judgment, man. You know, of being put to death. Right? Jeremiah says those, you know, to the sword. Bro, those that are to the sword, those that are to the calamities, right? Those that are to the captivity, right? Roughly paraphrasing. So whatever judgment the Lord ultimately brings upon you, right? You're going to know, right? You're speaking about the 2/3. They're going to know, right? That the Lord warned them that this was going to come, right? Through his prophets, through his mouthpiece. You know, Hosea 12:10, right? He speaks through the ministry of the prophets. So those who are not taking heed to the words of the prophets, when it comes time for them to be judged, the Lord's going to put it into their mind, right? To remember that they were told and they were forewarned, you know, but they're still going to receive that judgment, man. You know, they're still going to receive that judgment because they don't want to listen. They don't want to take heed. You know? Actually, we'll jump up. Verse 31, it says, and they come unto thee as the people cometh, and they sit before thee as my people, and they hear thy words, but they will not do them. For with their mouth they show much love, but with their heart goeth after their covetousness. Right, man? Right? You got a lot of these Christians, right, which are really, you know, cultural Christians, right? They're all about, you know, looking the part, but never actually, you know, they talk the talk, but they never walk the walk, right? These pagan Christians out here, hell, even a lot of, you know, these Israelites that are in these other camps, you know, they want to call upon the name, or not call upon the name, they want to use the name of Yahweh Bashim Al-Shah, and, you know, and you know, this word, right, to their benefit. But in reality, they're not with Yahweh Bashim Al-Shah, and they're going to be destroyed, right? They're going to be put to death. And we're going to see a lot of this judgment upon these, you know, cosplay Israelites, you know, real soon, man. You know, it says, and lo, thou art unto them as a very lovely song, of one that hath a pleasant voice, and can play well on an instrument. For they hear thy words, but they do them not. They don't want to do them, man. You know, and therefore, right, they're going to be judged. You know, they're going to be judged. And again, as we said through the Spirit, man, that hey, they're going to, at the last minute, they're going to remember that they were warned, that they were told. Right? Verse 33 again, it says, when this cometh to pass, and lo, it will come, then shall they know that a prophet have been among them. That's right. You know? But I want to hit this, going back to Daniel's 12 and verse 1. It says, and at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble. Again, and this is the time that's coming. It's fastly approaching. Right? Where a lot of these Israelites are going to be put to death. A time when a lot of these Israelites are going to be put to death. Right, because we read in 2nd Ezra 16th chapter that, you know, the 68th verse, right, that the burning wrath of a great multitude is kindled over you. Meaning you got a lot of these Edomites, man, they ready to fucking go. They ready to, you know, to ultimately, you know, lock and load and you know, start shooting. You know, start hunting. Right, because we know Esau is a cunning hunter. Right, this is why, you know, he's always, you know, got pictures of him hunting animals, this and the third. Hey, and Esau be hunting Jake too. You know? And Esau can't wait to get back to that. You know, he's got all these different movies. There's one that I remember, it has Bruce Willis in it, man. It's called Apex. You know, it's a movie of him, you know, gathering up all the, you know, the greatest, you know, what do you say, bounty hunters or this and the third of all time, right? And then pitting them against each other. Right, on a you know, a decent sized island, and there to basically hunt down each other and track each other, and that's what Esau does, man. And Esau gets a kick out of it. You know, Esau can't wait, man. A lot of you Jakes are finna be gunned down in this time because of your wickedness, right? It says and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. So the greatest time in all history is about to take place. Right? The greatest time in all history is about to take place. Jacob's trouble, the hour of temptation. Right? Where everyone's faith is going to be tested. And we understand that only the elect of the nation of Israel, right, that remnant, is going to be delivered in those times. Right? They were foreordained to receive deliverance, man. You know, it says right here, and at that time shall thy people be delivered, everyone that should be found written in the book. And this is, again, they're talking about the elect, right? Those first fruits, right? As you read in Revelations, the 14th chapter, verse 1, it says, and I looked, and lo, a lamb, which is talking about Yahushua, stood upon the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, which you can read in Revelations, the 7th chapter. It's talking about, you know, those prophets, right? The true prophets, Yahweh Bashim El Shah, which are here. Right? We have some, you know, that have ultimately, you know, passed on, and they're in the spiritual realm. You know, with Yahweh Shai, with Yahweh Bashim El Shai, right? And they're going to come back with Yahweh Shai, right? When Yahweh Shai comes back, right? But again, you have a lot of them still here on earth preaching and teaching this truth, man. You know? 12,000 from each tribe, right? Those men. It says, and with him 144,000 having his father's name written in their foreheads, meaning they have the name of Yahweh and Yahweh Shai. You know? Which, contrary to, you know, IUIC, man, you know, they're saying that, you know, the name is a fable. Hey, well, those dudes are finna fucking die, and they're false prophets, man. You know, may Jeremiah, the 23rd chapter, the first verse, happen to them speedily. You know? Mocking and scoffing the name of Yahweh Bashim El Shai, man. Verse 2, it says, and I heard a voice from heaven as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder, and I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. And they sung as it were a new song, which is going into this truth, this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, right? Those prophets, right, singing this song we read in Ezekiel, the 33rd chapter, right? And, you know, and lo, that were unto them as a very lovely and pleasant song, right? Roughly paraphrasing, right? So this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding is likened unto a song being sung, you know, and the prophets are singing that song today, right? It says, and they sung as it were a new song before the throne and before the four beasts and the elders. And no man can learn that song but the 144,000, and which were redeemed from the earth, right? And the 144,000, right, were given those secrets, right? As you read in Amos, the 3rd chapter, right, the 7th verse, right? The Lord will do nothing, but he will reveal his secrets unto his servants, the prophets, right? It says, and, you know, obviously, you know, they ultimately, you know, are giving out those secrets, right? Those mysteries unto the, you know, rest of the elect, right? Those who Yahweh B'Shem El Shai ordained to hear this word, right? It says, these are they which were not defiled with women, meaning these false doctrines, you know, not giving into, you know, Christianity, Catholicism, and whatnot. Right? You read, you know, you listen to, you know, brothers' testimonies, man, and a lot of bros, man, they grew up, right, in that. Let's say to myself, right, I grew up going to church and this and the third, right? I can remember from a young age, you know, but it never resonated, man. There was always questions, you know, in my spirit, man. There was always just something that just wasn't right, man, you know, because it wasn't the truth, man. Christianity, right, modern day Christianity is a fucking fable, man, you know. People thinking they got free will, right? Speaking about, you know, a devil, you know, red, all red with horns and a, you know, a pitchfork tail, holding a red pitchfork, you know. That's all a fable, man. That's all lies, man, right? Which are strongholds that have been pulled down time and time again by our elder apostles, you know. And guess what? Those men, through the spirit and power of Yahweh B'Shem El Shai, are correct. They've been right this whole time, man. You know? They've been right about everything through the spirit and power of Yahweh B'Shem El Shai. You know? And these men are speaking about, you know, and have taught us, right, that the Lord is only dealing with the elect of the nation of Israel. And that's thus saith the scriptures. Thus saith the words of Yahweh B'Shem El Shai. Right? So if everything that these men, right, have been saying, right, for decades, right, is coming true, and you best believe, right, that when they speak about the elect, right, and the elect being dealt with and the elect being delivered, right, out of all their troubles, and even being delivered, right, from the snare of the fowler and the noisome pestilence, which is the mark of the beast, and these ICBM nuclear missiles to be delivered by Yahweh Shai, and best believe it's going to happen, man. You know? Hence the reason why we're touching on it, you know, in this lesson, man. You know, I didn't really have, you know, any precepts kind of pulled up, man. I was just kind of you know, going in on that topic, man, looking up different precepts, whatnot, reading on it, you know, and I had a different direction, right, that I personally wanted to take it. But this, the Spirit of the Lord, right, does it better, man, you know, than I myself. All right. So what better to do than to follow the Spirit of Yahweh B'Shem El Shai, you know, you know, hey, cause I'm just a man. You know, if I, you know, try to do things, you know, my way, right, it would be more than imperfect, man. To be, you know, when we follow the Spirit, man, the Spirit of Yahweh B'Shem El Shai, you know, perfection, right? Verse 4, it says, these are they which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. Where it's talking about Yahweh Shai. Right? Yahweh Shai said what? In St. John the 10th chapter, my sheep hear my voice and they follow me. Right? And then when you go into that word follow, it's not just a word, right? It's an actual action, right? There's a you know, action put behind, right, following Yahweh Shai, man. Scriptures say that we're to walk even as he walked, and the elect are going to be doing that in these times, right? Putting on those characteristics of Colossians the 3rd chapter, right, as well as, you know, Ephesians the 4th chapter, and so on and so forth, all throughout the scriptures, man. You know, following the law, such commandments of Yahweh B'Shem El Shai, man, to the best of their ability. Right? These are they who are going to be what? Those first fruits. As we read, it says, these are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the first fruits unto the Most High and to the Lamb. Right? Being the first fruits, man. Right? That choice, that best part. And I think I have that word. No, I don't, but we'll look it up. In 14, Revelations 14, verse 4. Right? Look up the word first fruits. Strong's G 536.
Strong's G 536. Aparche.
Aparche. Right? It says what? To offer firstlings, the first fruits. It says to take away the first fruits of the production of the earth, which was ordered to the Most High, the first portion of the dough, from which sacred loaves were to be prepared. It's heavy, man. Right? It says hence term used of persons consecrated to the Most High for all time. You know? Again, brother, the elect, right? Those first fruits are going to follow Yahweh Shai whithersoever we go with, and that's within every regeneration, man. Right? And in all of our lives, our past lives, we've always followed Yahweh B'Shem El Shai. Right? Scriptures say that the spirit of the prophets is subject to the prophets. You know? That's how it goes. That's how the Lord ultimately created it to be. Right? So the elect were always the elect. You know? The elect were always the elect. Right? Even when they go off. Right? Scripture say a righteous man go off. Right? 7 times. He falls 7 times, man. But he gets up and what? Continues to follow after Yahweh B'Shem El Shai. Not letting his sins weigh him down. You know? It says, persons superior in excellence to others of the same class, which again is speaking about the elect, right? Who Yahweh Shai is going to come deliver. You know, this is Matthew 24. I think I actually had it up, and verse 29. We'll start right there. Right? It says the glorious return. It says immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Right? And then shall the sign appear, the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, which is talking about Yahweh Shai. When you read in Revelation the 19th chapter, starting at the 11th verse, right? Yahweh Shai coming with that army, right, to destroy, the wicked, right? Which we know is Esau, Edom, but even the 2/3 of the nation of Israel who follow the wicked and are wicked themselves. Right, who are in the scriptures likened unto heathens, man, because they follow the heathens. You know, Yahweh Shai is going to come and destroy them, but at the same time deliver the elect, and we're going to read that, right? It says, then shall the tribes of the earth mourn, because everybody's going to see Yahweh Shai, man. Revelation is the 1st chapter, man. Every eye shall see him, right? It says, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, because he's coming on that fathership, right? Which 2nd Ezra the 13th chapter likens unto a mountain, right? That when Ezra was seeing that vision, he couldn't see the ends of the chariot, man. Couldn't see the ends of it. That's how big it was, man. Well, it could be 100 times the size of the earth, hell, even 1,000 times the size of the earth. We don't know, right? We just know that it's going to be bigger than anything. The size of planets, the size of suns compared to the earth. It says what? It says, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the 4 winds, from one end of heaven to the other. And I want to grab that word elect, right? Because at the end of the day, it's all about the elect, right? Strong's G 1588, eklektos, right? It says picked out, chosen by the Most High to obtain salvation through HaMashiach, which Yahweh Shai, right? Through Yahweh Shai, through Yahweh Shai's, the shedding of his blood, right? He ultimately allowed for the forgiveness of sin of all the nations of Israel. But again, as we're reading, right, only the elect are going to be, forgiven of their sins on this side. All Israel shall be righteous, man. All Israel is going to be forgiven of their sins, and live in the kingdom, right, in righteousness forever, right, and be on top forever. Be filthy, stinking rich forever. Live forever. But it starts with the elect of the nation of Israel on this side. Lord will be of that number, right? It says Christians are called, chosen, or elect of the Most High. And we know those, the true Christians, right, are talking about the followers of Yahweh Shai, right? Which would be the elect in this time, right? Because 2/3 of our people, they don't follow Yahweh Shai. They don't follow Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai. They follow their own belly. It says the Messiah is called elect, as appointed by the Most High to the most exalted office conceivable, or correct, right? It says choice, select, i.e. the best of its kind or class. Excellence preeminent, applied to certain individual Christians, right? Certain, right? Not talking about everybody. It's talking about the elect, right? The best of their class, right? Let's see if it says it. It says by implication, favorite, right? Favorite. Out of even the favorite nation of the Most High, which are the Israelites, right? The Lord's heritage, right? Lord has a favorite of the favorites. Lord has a chosen of the chosen. He has the elect of his elect, right? Which his elect nation, right? His chosen nation are the Israelites, right? And within that nation, he has a certain group who he considers the best, which are the elect, right? Beginning with the 144,000, the true prophets, Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai, which are here today. Activating, right, through the spirit and power of Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai, the rest of the elect, back to Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai in these times, man. Lord will of that number, man. But deliverance is coming for the elect, But I just, was ultimately flowing through the spirit, man. Just kind of was meditating on that topic, man. The elect being the best in their class, and not all Israel is going to be delivered. You're going to have 2/3 of our people that are going to have to, ultimately receive, right, that judgment, for their sins, right, on this side, man. But eventually, right, all Israel will be, righteous, man. All the Israelites are going to be in the kingdom, right? They're just going to have to come back, right, through the loins of the elect, right? And as we read, right, some shall wake up to everlasting joy, right? And Daniel is the 12th chapter. I think it's the second verse. Some shall wake up to everlasting joy. Some shall wake up to everlasting shame. And that's just what they're going to have to deal with. But it's not going to be forever. It's just going to be for a period of time. And then after that time, hey, well, guess what? All that's going to subside, and you're going to live in joy and peace forever. But the goal is to, to be a part of the first fruits, right? Those that make it on the first go around, man. So where you don't have to feel that shame. Because imagine, right? Denying Yahweh Shai, right, after the sacrifice that he sacrificed his life for you, right? Imagine that shame and how that's going to feel. You don't want to feel that, you want to be a part of the first fruits that can, partake in that joy, partake in that, that rest, that's the goal, but again, that's all I have, man, through the spirit. Lord will is edifying, Lord will is straight to the point. I want to give all praise, honor, glory to Yahweh, B'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, B'Hashem, Rakakadash, double honors to the elder apostles, elder bishops, great millstone. Till next time, I say shalom.